Hello, this is Larry Ricker from larryricker.com, and I have a number of applications in the iTunes App Store, and I am getting ready to release a new version of the Project Status Pro. This version is going to get rid of several deprecated APIs that have been removed in recent versions of iOS, and cleaned up the search, speeded it up, accelerated it, and introduced some new features, but mostly making sure that the application is completely compatible with the latest versions of iOS. Now, every time I go through a major rewrite and clean up the application, removing deprecated codes, old APIs, there's quite a bit of code that has changed. I broke out some screens. I now have got 16 views and about 26 segues between different parts of the application. They're in, you can see them here in my main view. So there's a lot of transitions moving around between the application, and a lot of this is configuration. It's stored in the metadata that's stored inside the main storyboard controller, and it's a mixture of Objective-C and Swift. So I've converted some of the application to Swift, but some of it's still in Objective-C. So some of the features that I want to make sure that I go through, and I've got it running here in the simulator. Let me just bring that up. You can go in and you can create a new project, and it will autocorrect for you. And I changed that dialog. I've also gone into the actual project and added a new dialog here to create new status report sections. And let's see, so you can add a new section if you like, and then in that section actually add information in here like your things that you're working on today. So it's and you can type up your notes. You have a meeting and you store that, it stores it there, and then it's searchable. So if you go back to the main application and you search, and it'll narrow down the search rather quickly and actually drill down through the different status reports and then in on your data so you can find it quickly. And then if you cancel, the expectation is that the screens will reset and it'll go back to the main flow. So I want to go through the applications and make sure that the search is working properly in every application, that these create new projects working, that it creates a new project successfully, and I'll just make up a fake project. And then in each project that I can rename the project if I wish, and stores that, makes sure it's up to date, and then in each section of the notes that you can add new sections for each notes. And you can go in, actually scroll through them and rename them and change them back to the original name, or and then save it. And some of the data right now is some of the things showing up on the screen are actually in debug mode, so I have some numbers that will disappear in the final production release. And go through the application and just make sure that every button is clicked on, every segue, every instance, that every experience has been gone through, and that there's no crashes. I've never gotten a crash report on any of my applications in the App Store, but I don't want to start now, and I want to make sure that all the functionality is working as expected, and people are able to get through any of the functionality, be able to quickly search, find their notes, be able to do the spotlight search, and just go through the different. Each application has a little bit different experience. So like if I go into passing notes, for instance, here, it'll load up, and there's an expectation that the search will appear. It'll appear for just a bit, and then a banner will replace it with a search ad because that's a free version of the application. And so you have this screen, and then you have this screen that follows. Okay, here we go. This error message always shows up in the simulator. It's to be ignored. It's actually a check to see that there's an email account. So I want to verify that the ads are showing up, that they're refreshing properly, that they take up the full width of the screen, and that people are able to put in their class notes here. They can, or actually create classes and then rename them, and that those changes are made. So I'm going to go through the process of testing this application in Appium. So I'm not going to go too much into the functionality here, but you'll see more of the functionality of the application as I begin to build out the Appium tests. So I'm going to go through these steps. I'm going to start off by downloading the latest version of Eclipse, which at this time is probably Eclipse Neon. I'll verify that before I continue. Then I'll install Gradle, install Maven, and then I'm going to create a project and go into that project, configure it as a Java project, because I'm going to be testing this with Appium in Java. So if you're interested in a different language, you can go switch videos. I'm going to convert it to a Gradle project, and then I'm going to create a Gradle build process. And then the Gradle build process, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the Gradle build after I've set up all the dependencies that are required for Appium. Then I'm going to go in and use it to configure Eclipse, and then actually I'm going to start to write an Appium test and then kick off the build. So without much further ado, I'll just jump right into that process. So see if I can close that. So I'm going to shut down a few things here just to free up a little memory and get ready to switch over from Xcode, obviously, to Eclipse. And that'll go through the different versions of Eclipse that are available on the market today. And it goes through the history of the versions. It's about the best source of information on Eclipse. So here's your releases. And the most recent are down here at the bottom. And Neon is out, and that's the one I use generally. This Oxygen is planned and Photon is planned. So Neon appears to be the current release. So I'm going to go with first downloading Neon. And I did open up Terminal. Let me just check my version of Java. I presume it's 8.1, but I could be wrong. Okay. That appears to be mostly up to date. So I'm going to start the download of Neon Eclipse, and I'm going to try pausing this. And so let me start that. You go to, let's get it started. So eclipse.org is the correct website for that. Now, for testing, they have a lot of different versions of this. The Android version, I'm going to be testing an iOS application, so I'm not going to need the Android at this time. And generally, I get the JEE version for my other computers, but I think I'm going to probably going to go with the JEE version. They don't really have a tester version per se, and they don't have a version. Oh, here it is, Eclipse for testers. Interesting. Okay. It's Jubila and Mylan, and I'm going to go with the JEE version. So I'm going to download this, get this installed and running, and then I'm going to continue with the next step, installing Gradle. So let's get this going. I'm going to go with the Mac OS X Cocoa 64-bit version right here. So that's going to start downloading. Now I'm also going to have to download several other things, including the Selenium, and I'll have to go with the Appium Java client and gson. And but I'm not going to just download those jars and start copying them around. What I'm going to show you in this video is constructing a Gradle build, and then after I have the Gradle build all built out, then I'm going to use that to download all the jars, and the jars will get put right into Eclipse, and they'll be downloaded into my workspace directory as I'm doing the build. The reason I'm going to go with Gradle as the build process, now I could do Maven also and build a POM file, and it's mostly the same process. You go to maven-central, you find out the latest versions of the jars that you're going to need, and the configuration is pretty much the same. One's a POM file, which is XML, and the other is the Gradle configuration, the build.gradle file, which is a Groovy script. I'm going to go with Gradle. The reason I'm choosing that over Maven is because both of them can manage dependencies, but Maven manages dependencies by telling you what the dependencies are and requiring you to sort through the dependency conflicts between the jars. And Gradle has a little more advanced. It's a little more advanced and a little more robust in its ability to resolve dependencies. And I don't really want to waste too much time on dependencies between jars and interdependencies. If you don't know what I'm talking about with dependencies, I'm talking about you have a commons file that's, say, version 2.0, and then you have another project that you import, which is also an open source project, but it's dependent on commons, but it's dependent on commons 2.4 or 3.0, and Gradle will figure out what version is going to work for resolving that dependency conflict and pick out the appropriate appropriate jars for you to get the build to build successfully. It's always worked for me. It may not work in all situations, but I like to think that there's something out there helping me out instead of just sorting through it myself with a dependency conflict graph, as I would with Maven. So I'm going to check, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to check to see if I have Maven installed. Okay, so I don't have any Maven on here. Let's see, I don't think I have Gradle as well. Okay, so I'm going to have to download Maven and Gradle as well. So let me get those started. Maven is an Apache project. I guess it's kind of putting me on the same place. I'm probably going to sort that through offline. Let me, I do want the Maven, I actually want Gradle 3.5, so let me download Gradle here. Definitely want the 3.5 version. So let's go with the binary only. Oh, actually, I'm going to create a directory called, I'm going to put all my tools in DevTools. So let me start by that. So I'm going to create a directory. I'll put it right here under my root. At least I know where everything is. And Okay, Gradle's down here, so let's get that unzipped here. So they have the courtesy of telling you the command here. So it's unzip -d, and then we've got Gradle 3.5 bin.zip, and I should put it right here. Make me a liar. What did I do wrong? Unzip, downloads Gradle. -3.5-bin.zip. Okay, there's two ways to skin a cat. Let's see. Oh, wait, here it is. Oh, it put it in a subdirectory. Aha. Okay. So I'm going to move that. Oops. Let's try that again. Downloads. Gradle. And then I'm going to open up another Finder window. I'm going to open up my DevTools. And I put the directory right here. Okay, now I'm just going to put my Gradle 3.5 over there. Okay, so now I need to get that in my path. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to set the path. And the separator on the Mac is the colon. And I'll do the present working directory. And then I have a /Gradle 3.5/bin. And it should do it. Nope, it didn't do it. And then I need the bin. Okay, so I got 3.5. So let me get this path here. Copy that into my clipboard, and then I'm going to put that into my born again shell. I see what the problem is. So I need my path, colon. I'll just paste this in here. Alright. So if I launch a born again shell, and then I echo my path, And now I got it in my path. So if I type a gradle-version here, I got my version set up. Okay, so we got Gradle going. Now I need to get maven-central, or Maven going here, Maven. Okay, download Maven. Let's do the zip file. So we get that down here. And in the meantime, it looks like my Eclipse has now arrived. So, showing it in Finder. Okay, I'm going to put that over in my dev. Let's put it in this directory here. I'm going to put it in DevTools, right alongside of Gradle. Okay, let's unzip that. As you can tell, I work on Windows during the day. Okay. And I'm going to move Maven over here. Okay, so we got 2 out of 3 done. Now I need, I want to get that maven command in my path. So let's go back to the terminal and add that to the path. And it's going to be pretty much the same directory as Gradle, except it's now going to be Maven. Alright, good. Now I'm using VI just because I'm comfortable with that. I'm going to put these together. That's Shift-J. Pull that in, and then I'm going to use the Shift-X to put those files all up tight. Click that out. Now I'm going to launch another Born Again shell, and that should pull in my path. And now if I type Maven, yeah, actually that won't work. I have to do a Maven version. Oh, not that version, MVN-version. There we go. Okay, so we got Maven 3.5. Oh, this is going to be easy. Everything's 3.5. Okay, so let's see what we can do with Eclipse here. That was easy. Okay. So now I've got Eclipse going. Okay, so next thing I was going to go through is I've got Gradle installed, I've got Maven installed, they're both put in my path. Now I'm going to get into Eclipse and start creating a project here. See if I need to free up some memory. Probably don't need Chrome anymore. Certainly need the video. Okay. That did not launch. Let's double click on that. So pretty. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use this as my, workspace is good. I could call it workspace neon, but yeah, generally workspace is fine. I should be able to find that. Click OK. And I'll come up with an empty workspace. I'll get started on creating the build.gradle file and get this set up. Okay, we got the nice little splash screen. So we kill that and jump right into the Project Explorer. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to create a new project. So to create a new project, you do Start New, and you can do a project. It's going to be a Java project, so let's see if I can go straight to Java project. There we go. And oh, they got different choices with the, I don't want an AMP build. I'm going to do Gradle build. I don't think that they're going to have a project configured as a Gradle project right off the bat. You have to convert to a Gradle project. Oh, they have JUnit. I'm going to do JUnit 5, which is not going to be the default, so I'm going to just get started here. So let's do a Java project. And again, I want to get an Appium build so I can automatically test my application. So I'm going to call this the Appium, well, I'll call it the Project Organizer Appium. And I don't need to say test project because it is a project. It's redundant. Okay, and then I'm going to use the Java SE 1.8 and separate folders. Sounds good. Next. Now, I'm going to have to manipulate this a little bit because the default for Gradle is the source directory is under source test Java, and the resources is source test resources. So I'm going to just manipulate this a little bit. So let's add some directories. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to create a resources directory. I'm probably going to have to tune the exclusions later. And now I'm going to get rid of this source directory here. Okay, remove that from the build. So that way the projects will all be in a package relative to the source test Java directory. So I pretty much set the output from, I can map, well, by default the Gradle's going to put the files in build, and I'm just going to set it as that, and yeah, that'll be good. And then I can map when I add Maven to this. I might add a POM file to build, do a Maven build as well later in the video or in a separate video. So I can map that into the build directory. So this kind of project is associated with a Java perspective. So package explorer type Java specific navigation. Do you want to change perspectives? Yeah, I like the Java perspective. Okay. So let's get started. So I need to create a build.gradle file right here in the start, and then that's going to download all my files that I need. So let's get started with that file. New file, and I'm going to put it right in the root, and it's going to be build.gradle. Good. Okay, editors available online. Better for .gradle is in the marketplace. Show proposals. How very interesting. Yeah, eGradle. Sounds good. As long as we don't get too bloated. Oh, minimalistic. That sounds less bloated. Okay. That's 3 to 35. Oh, this is 15 kilobytes. The minimalistic is bigger, so let's go with eGradle. Okay. So I can run that in the background. So let's get started with our build file here. So typically I'm going to have to set up the repository. And so that's usually you start with repositories. Okay, we're not going to get too far without restart. So again, just to rehash, I'm going to go through and I'm going to, at this point, I've already installed Gradle and I've installed Maven. I'm going to create a project. I'm going to create the build.gradle file, and then I'm going to use build.gradle file to download the jars and install them into the project and get ready to build my Appium Appium test. So I'm going to use Gradle. Maybe you use Maven. Certainly use maven-central. And then going to use gson Java client for Appium and the Selenium jars, and I may have to add a few jars as things progress. So let's get started. Repositories, and we've got in the repositories section, usually we go directly to maven-central unless you have a Artifactory server, and if you have one of those, then you'll just put that in here instead. It's a little different configuration. Then we're going to have to get a few plugins. So we've got the plugin for Java, of course, and then we're going to get the plugin for Eclipse. And just to make this go a little quicker, actually, let's get a carriage return on the end of that line. And I've got to do application. And I've got to do org, the Gradle plugin. And then, of course, Maven. And not to be misspelled. And the maven-publish. All right. Then next section we want to do is get right into the dependencies. I'm going to go with a minimalistic configuration first. I can add to this configuration as we need, but I just want to try to get the basics in here and try to get a build going, and then if I have to add more settings, I'll just add those to the configuration. So let's add our dependencies, and then we have our source sets. I'm going to jump down through, just kind of outline this build first, and then I'll go fill in the details. So the source sets are going to be, I'm going to have the directories I set up. So they were the main, and for Java we've got source. Now this is the default directory, so actually this configuration is not completely necessary, but I like to put it in there just to be explicit about where I'm pulling my source code from. And it also gives me a configuration point in case I have to map it into somebody's old, obscure directory structure. And I'm just going to put in another source directory. Actually, I'm just going to copy because it's easier. And that one's going to be test resources. Great. And we've got our curly braces, which should map, and put another curly brace, which would be really swell if it mapped, matched up, and then we'll go to the source. Again, not lining up. Okay, we'll get it straightened out. Okay, so then we're going to have test. Generally, the testing section, I like to generate the XML output as well as the HTML output. And in order to get both of those outputted in my test reports, I'm going to go with test. And I'm going to put in include. And then I'm going to include two types of reports. I'm going to start with the XML report. And then I'll also add the HTML. And I have to close out my brackets. I like them to line up. And my last bracket, again, I like it to line up. Okay. So we got the test section. And then I need a test runner. Since I'm going to go with JUnit5. And now you could go with testng. That's your particular choice. You could go with JUnit4, but I'm going to pull in the jar dependencies for JUnit5 just because I have experience with JUnit5 and you might as well deal with the future instead of the past. And it runs about, I'm not going to make crazy performance claims, but it definitely runs much faster than the older version. So you can run JUnit4 tests inside of JUnit5, and you would do that with the JUnit Vintage test runner, but I'm not going to write any JUnit4 tests, so I'm just going to put the JUnit-Jupiter test runner in here and just execute everything as JUnit5 tests. And now I'm going to have a tags, and my tags identify, I'll get into the tags a little later on. I'm just going to put in one tag. You can put in as many tags as you want. This tag is going to be for my Appium app, so I'm just going to call it iOS. It can be whatever you want it to be. And then you need a test pattern. Now, for the test pattern, I'm going to put in this is a pattern match, similar to what you have in JUnit4 where you pass in a parameter to execute tests, specifically one test. Now you can modify this particular line however you see fit, but so it's include class name pattern, and then just a wildcard setting which includes every possible setting or every possible test file is going to start out with caret, meaning the first character of the line, a dot, meaning refer to any character, star, any number of characters would match on that, then a $, meaning the end of line character. That'll match on basically everything. And that's a good start, but I'm going to narrow it down a little bit, and I'm going to use a naming convention on my test files. So I want them to be the same whether I execute them in Maven or I execute them in Gradle. So instead of just .star and including everything, I'm going to do .star test .star, and that's just going to have anything that starts with the word test in the class name, and it'll match on that as long as it has the tag iOS and it's a JUnit5 test. It'll kick off and run with this. Now, what I need to do at this point, I'm going to save. I'm going to go back up here and start working on the dependencies, because that's really the bulk of the work. This is just the framework of the Gradle build, but I need to really work on the dependencies. And then I think once I got the dependencies in there, we should be good. Now, I'm going to put this one line in here, which is the test depends on the clean test. And what that does is, for my automated test, it's going to run a clean every time you run a build or a test command. So the command to execute is going to be, and I'll just put it in here, so it's Gradle build is your basic Gradle build command. But what you probably want to do is a Gradle clean build, that's going to clean out all your compiled source and then rebuild the whole project. That'll usually kick off your tests, but you could do alternately Gradle clean build test. That's kind of very verbose, or you could just get away with just doing a Gradle clean test, and that's usually works as well. Or you could just do a Gradle test. These are different choices of how to execute your Gradle script. And these are comments, so these are commented out with the // so you don't have to worry about that. That's not part of the configuration. That's just a comment for your benefit. So not necessary. Okay, so let's get into the dependencies. So we've got a compile dependencies and we got test dependencies. So let's start with the test dependencies. So we've got the testCompile step, which is going to compile it's a task, it's going to kick off, and it's going to compile. And then in here, you've got to put the dependencies. So this line, we're going to have a bunch of different dependencies here. So the way we populate this is we go to maven-central, and we get these. So let's go to maven-central. If you have an Artifactory, you can use Artifactory instead, and it'll tell you the exact same information if you're in a lockdown environment, like a corporate type environment. There we go. Okay. So what you want to do is, if you have the name of a particular compiler that you need to map out and figure it out, what the dependencies, if you're building a Gradle file from scratch, like for a project, you would probably do like the advanced search, and then you would put in the fully qualified class name and search for the class name that's the missing class, and search for it that way. I have a number of dependencies kind of jotted down here that I'm going to search for. So let's start with the, I'm going to go with the Jupiter API. So we'll go with the junit-jupiter-api. And M4 should be good. Jupiter API. So if I was building a Maven POM file, I would use this configuration, but since I'm using Gradle, yeah, Artifactory is nice in that it actually gives you the line for your Gradle file. This one you're gonna have to like reverse engineer a little bit, so let's go through that. So what we're going to do is I'll just put the XML in here and then convert it into just string. So it's going to be the group ID, colon, and then we put the artifact ID, colon, and then we close out with another quote. That's one dependency. So we've got the M4 Jupiter. So that's the first one. So the next one is going to be the Jupiter engine. So let's go to that. Again, we'll go back to the Jupiter search, and we're going to get the engine. This is your test runner. So maven. Okay. So we'll grab the group ID, the artifact ID, etc. Okay, so let's start off with the beginning of the line, and then I'm going to pull in the group ID, and the next thing is going to be the colon, artifact ID, and then another colon, and then we have the version number. And then you close that out with a quote at the end of the line. Starting to like Artifactory. Okay. But you don't have an Artifactory, so you got to go with maven-central. Okay, so the next dependency we're going to have is the, well, we could go with the JUnit4 test runner. Don't think I'm going to need that one. And I need the junit-platform-console. That's the console runner. So I'm going to need this for JUnit5. So let's go with the JUnit junit-platform-console. And I want the, oh, they got the 1.0 M4. Excellent. Okay. Console standalone. Have not experienced that one yet. Okay, I'm going to just go with the one I'm familiar with. So, we got the Jupiter engine. No, that did not refresh. Okay. Let me close that panel. Click on this one.
Well, because I installed it a lot of times, because here's the thing, like...
Okay, that's better. Okay, so let's pull in the group ID, artifact ID, and version, and put that into a testCompile dependency.
But let's just say if we had a free account, maybe try to switch it. I wonder if that's fine on the
All right.
Maybe try to switch it.
It's a single quote, then the first element, next item, colon, and then the version ID, version number, and you finish out the line with a single quote. All right, good. All right, so next I'm going to do got the JUnit runner. Now we need Selenium as a dependency. So what's the current Selenium version? So thinking it's 3.2, but I could totally be wrong. So let's just search maven-central for the current Selenium server. And we got 3.4 right here. So that's a little bit more than 3.2. Good. Okay, so let's go with the latest versions. So we want the, no, got the wrong lines there. We want the group ID, the artifact ID, and the version number. Again, I have to map the XML. Actually, it would be easier if I was doing a POM file, because I could just use the XML direct. But I decided to go with Gradle, just for the dependency management. So first put the group ID, then a colon, then the artifact ID, and then a colon, and then the version number. And you map out all the jars. What this does for you is, once you've got the Gradle configuration all set up, I know it's a little bit of work, but it takes care of, you got one place with all your versions listed out, and then you can always update the version. It'll automatically download the latest jars. You've got a build file that will execute on a build server, so you could get Jenkins, download it, you can configure it, and execute these Gradle builds directly inside of Jenkins. You can also execute them on the command line with the commands I already showed you. I downloaded Gradle earlier. You can do Gradle build, Gradle test, Gradle clean, Gradle clean test, and it's a quick, easy way to launch all your Appium tests. So, moving right along. See, I don't really have any cross-project dependencies. I also got the JSON, so let's get that. I'm going to save. I'm a little paranoid about saving. And 2.31, okay, 2.81, that seems like a pretty recent version. Yeah, let's go with that. JSON 281. So again, we get the group ID, artifact ID, and the version number. This is a POM file here. It's a Maven build file that I'm reading it from. And again, if you were doing Maven, you would build a POM file to do your build, and you just pull in all the dependencies. So the first factor is, again, the group ID. Then we get the artifact ID separated by a colon. You got to make sure the colons are always in there. And then the next setting is the 2.81. And then you close it out with a single quote. And that's gson. Google. Son. Okay, so then we've got the Java client for Appium, which doesn't really have any reference to Appium in it, which is kind of weird. Let's see if it comes up like this. Yeah, it's kind of iffy. Ah, here we go. Appium IO beta. Let me just cross-reference that for sanity's sake here. There we go. Yeah, okay, same one. Great. Okay, so good. That kind of nails it right there. Is it the same one as I've got here? Appium 5.0 beta. Okay, good. Just wanted to cross-check that to make sure I'm not getting the wrong file. Again, group ID, artifact ID, version number. So testCompile. And I'm going to just get rid of the group ID. And then a colon between the group ID and the artifact ID. And a colon between the artifact ID and the version. And then close it out with a quote at the end of the line. Okay, so we've got Appium. Ooh, we got some extra gibberish in here. Okay, good. And so for the next, so that's Selenium Java. That doesn't say it's a source. Let's see if there is a source reference. Now, I know it's an io.appium at this point, so I want to narrow my search. So I'm going to go to the advanced search and go with the io dash, let's see if that was right, io-.appium. Let's do a search. Okay, so they've got two things. They've got the 1.0 beta 1 and the 5.0 beta 8. Well, looks like a pretty obvious choice there. Okay, so they don't have a separate jar for source that's in maven-central, so can't really pull that in automatically. Now, I need this. I think I already got the selenium-server. Yes. Okay, and that's a selenium-server standalone. Now let's check that out. Maybe I have a. Let's go out of this search. Go back into the regular search. Selenium-server standalone. No, that's not helpful. Okay, standalone.jar, that's old technology. Okay, so now I'm going to replicate these completely. Separate set of dependencies, and these are going to just be the compile dependencies. The exact same dependencies. I'm just going to make them compile dependencies. In case I have to build an app in here as well. It's probably unlikely, but that may not be a necessary step. Okay, so I think I've pretty much got my build.gradle file here, so I think I'm ready to run it. Okay, so let's do that. So what we want to do is launch a CMD here, or a shell. So let's see if we can do it inside of doesn't look like this version of Eclipse has the login. Oh, terminal. There we go. Beautiful. Oh, sweet. Okay, terminal right there. Okay, so how sweet is that? Okay, Gradle Eclipse is the command, and that will configure Eclipse. Ah, build failed. Not good. Okay, something's wrong. You think. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So I've got a plugin dependency. I told you I'd add stuff later. Okay, so I want the Gradle dependency added into my project. So I'm going to have to add those lines, so not a problem at all. Okay, let's get started on that. The dependencies for plugins, you got to put them up above the other dependencies. So what I'm going to do is I didn't know if I needed all this stuff, but I guess I do. Okay, so I got the build script, and I'm going to close that out just to match up my brackets. And I'm going to put in a replication of this line. Seems kind of wasteful, but one of them is the dependency for the repositories for the plugins, and I guess you could pull one of them from app like Artifactory and one of them from maven-central, or two different maven-central repositories, but I'm not going to do that. And then that's the maven-central repository, and then I need the dependencies for my plugin, which are, now I'm going to go back to maven-central to just make sure, because there's probably an M4 version of this. So let's just go back to maven-central. I'm going to do a search for the junit-platform-gradle plugin. There we go. Yep, there is an M4. How sweet is that? Okay, so we pull in the POM, and we're going to grab these lines, the group, the artifact ID, and the version number. And again, I'm just going to make it a, this is a little different. It's a class path. Paste those in, and then I'm just going to concatenate them together. The group ID, colon, artifact ID, and then colon, version number. And then I'm just going to put quote at the end of the line and give it another go. I'll include this somehow with the YouTube video, this build file for your reference, so you won't have to actually retype all this. Okay. Is that the right line? Oh wait, no, we have it right in Eclipse. How sweet is that? I'm so not used to how sweet that is. Okay, so here we are. Gradle Eclipse. This is like Atom or one of the tools from Microsoft, like Visual Studio Code. It's kind of nice to have a terminal right there inside of Eclipse. Oh, I'm liking Macs. So what it's doing right now is it's going out to the place where we were, maven-central. It's going into the repo, and it's downloading all the jars and setting them up as dependencies in this project. Now, one thing about Eclipse, it doesn't just refresh and automatically load its configuration. What you have to do is close it out and restart it. So I'm going to do that now. We'll load up Neon again. It'll reload the configuration of the project, and now we should pretty much have all our jar dependencies set up in our project. Okay, great. So let's I'll show you a little bit about the configuration. So your configuration in Eclipse is in, make me a liar, project properties. Okay, not available. I guess I have to select the project and then do project properties, huh? Yeah, makes sense. Okay, now we want to look at the build path. So what you have in here, and I know you probably watch other videos on this, this is the reason I wanted to do this, because you didn't have to go and drag and drop all those jar files and drop them all over the place and make a big mess of your file system. If you use Gradle, it automatically configures all that for you. And I got all the jars in here, and not only do I have all the jars in here, I have all the jars that those jars are dependent on, and it's all pulled in and it's automatically set up. So that's going to conclude this video. Now, in the next video, I'm going to get into actually building Appium test and start testing my application with Appium. So, till later.